Hi, I'm Amber,
And I'm Kirsten.
and you're listening to
Lurking in the Shadows.
Hello!
Hi.
Today we are talking about a case that I was very excited to do. It is known as the Pickaxe Murders, and I don't know if Kirsten's heard of it yet or not. We'll have to see once I get
I
into
don't
it,
think
but
so.
I came across it. No, you don't think so? I came across it actually scrolling TikTok.
Oh, nice.
So, um, it was like I saw a little fact about it and I was like, wow, okay, this case sounds interesting. So I decided to look into it, and that's how I got into this case.
Oh, and a little correction before we start. Last episode I mentioned it was episode 3. It was not. It was just my third case.
Yeah, we alternate.
Yeah,
That's why.
that's why I was thinking it was
So
3.
now, but that's okay. We're just taking it a case at
We
a
are.
time here. So here we are at the next case. Today, I'm talking about Karla Faye Tucker. She was born November 18th, 1959, to her parents, Larry and Carolyn Tucker. Larry was a labor worker. He worked in a shipyard, and Carolyn was a prostitute.
Hmm.
They divorced when Karla was 10 years old. She was the youngest of 3 girls, and they remember growing up in a middle class family and taking family trips together. When she was 8, she caught her sisters smoking pot, and they offered her a hit, and she decided to take it. So at 8,
Wow, that's bold.
yeah, and yeah. So since she partook with her sisters, then she obviously, like, they said, well, now you can't tell on us because
You did it
you did
too.
it too. Yeah, the classic
Hmm.
sister thing. But that was actually when she wound up picking up the habit of smoking at 8 years old. At 10, after her parents had divorced, she found out that she was the result of an affair that her mother had
Oh,
had.
wow.
Yeah. And then when she was 12, she began doing different drugs. Like, she moved on and was also starting to have sex at 12.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Uh, and I have a quote here from Karla about an experience that she had while she was hanging out with her older sisters. And it says, back then there was a lot of drugs and sex. My sisters ran around with older people. One of their friends was in a biker club. He came to my sisters, and when he found out that they weren't there, he took me off onto his motorcycle. He asked me if I wanted to shoot up some heroin.
At the age of
I think
12?
he was going, yep. If I wanted to shoot up heroin, I think he was going to molest
Oh,
me.
God.
But he shot me so full of heroin that I got sick and wasn't able to do anything. He ended up dropping me off at some apartments. That was the beginning of me shooting dope.
Wow.
End quote.
That's sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
12 years old?
12 years old. Yeah. By the age of 14, she had dropped out of school and decided to go with her mom after her and her dad had split up. And want to guess what her mother, because remember, her mother was a prostitute, was doing for her 14-year-old daughter to come join her doing?
Mm.
They were groupies
Oh,
following around bands like Allman Brothers Band, the Marshall Tucker Band, and even the Eagles.
wow.
They prostituted to afford that particular lifestyle.
That's so sad. Prostitution
Yeah.
makes me sad. Because 9 times out of 10,
14.
they don't want to do it. It's not because they want to,
No,
it's
I
because they
know.
have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, it's like it's necessity to survive. And I am totally a person of as long as you are not hurting somebody else, get your money how you get your money.
Yeah.
That's,
I just
that's
feel
your
sad for them.
business. Yeah, I do. It is, and she's 14. But this is all she knew. It's her mother.
Right.
Her mother was a
Well,
prostitute.
even at that
you
age,
know.
that's not prostitution. She's being. Well,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah. You're exactly right. But it's very
Yeah.
sad. When Karla was 16, she married 19-year-old Stephen Griffith. They met when Stephen and some of his buddies pulled their bikes into one of the local parks to party, and Karla and her friends were already there hanging out, and they were smoking a, quote, fat pink joint.
Huh.
And I was like, I want one.
What is the pink?
Okay, funny. I asked my parents. I was like, "Yo, back in the day, y'all ever blazed up a fat pig joint?" And they're like, "No, not particularly, but it's probably just the paper color." And I was like, "You know what? You're probably right. It's probably just like paper
Maybe.
colors. I just never looked for any." So now next time I roll up a joint, I'm going to request pink papers. So, a quote from Griffith, his last name's very
Yeah, that's
weird,
hard to say.
describing their relationship says, this is pretty funny. "We got along fairly well. We fist fought a lot.
Oh,
I've never had men hit me so hard as Karla did.
what?
Whenever I went into a bar, I didn't have to worry because she had my back covered. She was tough."
Sounds like it.
Some other things they enjoyed doing as a married couple was they collected guns, they joined a motorcycle club, and also enjoyed playing tackle football without any kind of gear, of course.
Just a normal Sunday, you know?
Yeah. Karla decided to leave Stephen after a few years because she was still, quote, working off her wild streak. So I guess, because she's young.
Yeah.
So in her 20s, she began hanging out with more bikers. And that is how she was introduced to Sean Dean. And here's another name, Kirsten, for you. We were just talking about earlier women's names and men's names, the Sydney. So Sean's a girl.
Okay.
So she was introduced to Sean Dean and her husband, Jerry Lynn Dean. She ended up moving in with them for the next 2 or so years, and during those 2 years, Jerry and Karla would fight constantly. It was a rocky relationship, and by the time she had moved out, she despised Jerry. While Karla was still living with them, they introduced her to another man named Daniel Ryan Garrett. He goes by Danny, so I'm going to call him Danny. They met when Karla was 21 and Danny was 35 in 1981. By 1983, Karla and Danny had moved in together into a house in Houston. But unfortunately for Karla, the pattern of an unstable home continued because this home quickly became a hub of drugs, sex, and fights daily. Yeah.
She can't get away from it.
Or, nope, not even with marriage and new husband, nothing. On June 11th, 1983, Karla, her sisters, and friends decided to take the entire weekend to celebrate the sister's birthday. So for the next 2 days, everyone participated in copious amounts of drugs, including heroin, coke, and various varieties of illicit drugs. Yep. So after partaking in the drug equivalent of Thanksgiving dinner with the family, Karla and
You mean because of
Karla
the
and
variety
Danny.
of drugs? That's their
Yeah,
food?
I pictured in my head just like passing it around.
My
Like,
God.
hey, you want the Coke? Could you, instead of pass the gravy, pass the mashed potatoes? Nope. That's what I pictured in my head. So Karla and Danny are drugged out of their minds. They are sleep deprived because they haven't slept in over 24 hours. Naturally, they're just hanging out. They get to talking and came up with this idea to go steal Jerry's motorcycle and sell parts off of it as a way for Karla to get some kind of weird revenge on Jerry. Apparently, weeks earlier, when Karla was helping Sean move out of Jerry's because they had separated by that time, Karla had swiped the spare keys because she, quote, didn't know when they could come in handy, end quote. They drove to Jerry's apartment thinking he would be home alone, but earlier that day on June 12th, Jerry had met a woman named Deborah at a pool party. Jerry was a 27-year-old man. He was 5'7", 150 pounds. He full body embraced the 70s. His style, his vibe, all of it screamed like biker, hippie. He was so proud of his motorcycle. He worked on it all the time. He was known for his big personality and his charm, and he used it on Deborah that day to catch her attention.
Did your research say anything about why him and Karla just couldn't get along?
There was, the only thing I could find was stupid little petty incidents of like them fighting with each other over like roommate issues, because it wasn't a romantic, this is roommates, they're roommates. So one time Jerry destroyed a picture that Karla had with her mother, and that like sparked a big fight, and it was just like petty things back and forth.
Okay.
But I really think it was fueled and sparked with Karla because she was, her whole life has been just drugs and stuff, and she has not at this point really lived a sober moment since she was like 12.
Right.
So I feel like she isn't thinking right. I really feel like it was something so petty that she just hung on to.
Yeah.
It was nothing. There was no real story of like, oh, he really backstabbed me or anything.
Right.
Nothing like that.
Okay.
No. Deborah Ruth Carlson was born May 10th, 1951 in Columbus, Ohio, to parents Bill and Harriet Liss. Unfortunately, Bill and Harriet divorced, and Deborah became closer to her mother and her new military stepfather, Homer Carlson. Deborah ended up taking Homer's last name, and she became estranged from her biological father. She married Richard Thornton on May 12th, 1981. They ended up moving to Houston, Texas after Deborah rekindled her relationship with her biological father. Her father owned a manufactured home business in Houston, and he was going to give her a job so that she could start working down there, but just for like a little while. And she worked there until she became a bookkeeper at a mortgage company. Her and Richard had 2 kids together, but they also had a very strained relationship. They actually ended up having a fight on June 12th, the day of the party. So after the fight, Deborah made sure her kids were taken care of, and she went to the pool party to enjoy herself. And I think that she really did enjoy herself because Jerry and Deborah wind up taking the party back to Jerry's place. Around 3 a.m. that night, so now we're in June 13th, 1983, Karla and Danny tried to quietly enter Jerry's apartment. They made their way to the bedroom where Deborah and Jerry were sleeping, but chaos quickly ensued as soon as they entered the bedroom and began yelling. Of course, everyone woke up. Deborah is crying, and Danny tells her to put her head underneath the blanket. At this point, Jerry and Deborah began pleading with Karla and Danny. Jerry was a cable installer for his job for a cable company. So he had some tools in his room next to his bed. And Danny picked up a ball-peen hammer and hit Jerry in the head. And this is when Karla snapped. She picked up a pickaxe off the floor and began hitting Jerry. After swinging the pickaxe 20 times at Jerry, she moved on to Deborah, hitting her 15 times.
Poor girl.
Leaving the final blow of the axe buried in Deborah's chest. So from the autopsy, Jerry was found with multiple scalp lacerations and skull fractures, 15 stab wounds to the chest, 5 stab wounds to the back, and lacerations to the right arm, middle finger, and left forearm. Deborah had 10 stab wounds to her back and 5 to the chest. Once Karla was gassed out from swinging the axe that many times, they robbed the place. They even stole the El Camino from the front yard.
Wow.
They drove directly to Douglas Garrett's house, and that's Danny's brother. At this point, they're not only running off of drugs, they're now full of adrenaline from the murder. They couldn't keep they're pumped.
Sounds like
they couldn't keep what they did to them. They couldn't keep what they did to themselves. They told Danny's brother everything. They just came clean that night to him. The next day, a coworker of Jerry's was waiting for a ride to work with him, but when he didn't show up, he went to Jerry's apartment and discovered the bodies of Deborah, aged 32, and Jerry, aged 27. The scene was a very gruesome scene. However, there was not a lot of evidence. No fingerprints, and Karla really thought they were going to get away with it. And they did get away with it for about 5 weeks until they started making Douglas nervous. In the weeks after the murder, they became more paranoid and started talking about tidying up loose ends. That's why he was getting nervous. Because they were getting nervous that somebody was going to crack. So Douglas was convinced that they were going to kill him. And that's the only reason he decided to go to police. He didn't do it for the victims, of course. He didn't do it for anybody else but himself. He decided to go to the police.
I'm glad he did, though.
Yeah, I'm glad he did too. You're right. Police got Douglas to wear a wire to get them to confess on tape, and boy, did they. Okay, trigger warning for some of this. Karla is quoted saying that she would climax with every swing of the axe while she was killing Jerry, but not while she was killing Deborah.
Okay.
When asked by Douglas if this was true, Karla said, quote, "Well, hell yeah." Karla was found guilty of capital murder on April 19th, 1984. And on April 25th, there was a hearing held where Karla was then sentenced to death. Danny ended up dying in prison in 1993 of liver failure at the age of 47. So that's That's the end of him. I don't cover him anymore. There was nothing else about him. As soon as Karla went to prison, she discovered God and Christianity. She had only had one religious experience in her life when she was younger. She had gone to church with a friend and the friend's parents. And Karla didn't know what was going on or what she was supposed to be doing. She had never been in a circumstance like this. And afterwards, the friend never talked to her again.
Weird.
She had no idea what the Bible was, but when she was in prison, she had picked it up and read it in her cell. She was now sober for the first time in her adult life, and it inspired her to become more involved while on death row. Some things she did while incarcerated was join the prison ministry. She had completely converted to Christianity by October of 1983, and remember, she was arrested in July. And she also married the prison minister, Reverend Donna Lane Brown.
Interesting.
Yep. And they got married in 1995. She fought her entire rest of her life for her sentencing to be changed to life in prison. And in the 1990s, as her execution date crept closer, her case began catching a lot of attention around the world. It got so big that the case caught the attention of Pope John Paul II, European Parliament, and the television evangelist Pat Robertson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The case sparked debates, rallies, protests, and even television segments on Larry King Live. All of this attention wasn't just for the questionable morality of the death penalty, but also the religious rebirth into Christianity that she experienced, and that she would also be the first woman in Texas executed since before the Civil War. And a lot of people also did not like the idea of executing a reverend's wife now.
Okay. She wasn't
She
always a
appealed
reverend's
for
wife,
clemency.
though.
No. She appealed for clemency, saying, this is good, you'll like this. If she would have been sober, she wouldn't have killed anyone.
We don't know that for sure, but it's certainly possible.
She also pleaded that if her sentencing was reduced to life in prison, she would spend the rest of her time on earth helping people. She even got the support of Ronald Carlson, that's Deborah's brother.
Wow.
He rallied to save Karla's life and forgave her for what she had done.
That's crazy. Can't say I'd do the same.
But no, I'm not. I'm very good at moving on and not forgiving.
Yeah.
I'm very good. We would probably hear this is, but I can't say I'd be like Deborah's husband. So Deborah's husband, Richard, wanted Karla dead. He was very angry and had a strong stance on her execution. He even considered Ronald a family traitor for being on the side for Karla. Richard ended up sitting on the victim's side to watch the execution, and Ronald sat on the side in support of Karla for the execution. Yeah. In one final attempt on Karla to save herself, she wrote a letter to George W. Bush, who was the Texas governor at the time. And a little piece from this letter says, "When I share that I was out of it on drugs the night I brutally murdered 2 people, I fully realized that I made the choice to do those drugs. Had I chose not to do drugs, 2 people would still be alive today. But I did choose to do those drugs, and I did lose it, and 2 people are dead because of me."
Well, I'm glad she can admit to it that she was wrong.
Yes. Bush had a great response to her letter, in my opinion. He said, The gender of the murderer did not make any difference to the victims.
It's true.
Yep. On February 3rd, 1998, Karla enjoyed her last meal of sliced peaches, a banana, and a tossed salad. She was
Well, she
taken
wanted.
to the execution. I don't know what the options
That's your
were,
last
okay?
meal you're choosing?
That's not what I'm picking, but I don't know what the options. I thought technically for your last meal
Like
options were
endless,
whatever
yeah,
you
whatever you
wanted. But
want.
yeah, that's what I thought, but I
Maybe it
don't
was
know.
different back
I
then. I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Maybe, maybe, maybe that is really what she wanted. I don't know. She was taken to the execution chamber at 6:25 p.m. She was strapped to the table, and Karla said her last words. I would like to say to all of you, the Thornton family and Jerry Dean's family, that I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this. Baby, I love you, she told her husband, Donna. Ron, give Peggy a hug for me. Everybody has been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I'm going to be face to face with Jesus now. Warden Baggett, thank you so much. You have been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I will see you all when you get there. I will wait for you. The lethal injection was administered as she hummed to herself, and Karla Faye Tucker was pronounced dead at 6:45 p.m., February 3rd, 1998.
Wow. I feel like there are worse crimes that don't get the death penalty than what she did. I mean, obviously, what she
Yeah.
did was terrible. Um,
No, I know exactly what you're saying.
but like, why haven't more people been executed then? If she's being executed for that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So do you feel like her crime was not justifiable with the death penalty
It's hard to
as the
say. I
punishment?
mean, if you're looking at it eye for an eye, you kill someone, yeah, goodbye. You're getting death penalty. But that's not the case for a lot of people that are convicted of killing someone. A lot of times they just get life without parole. So I'm just curious what the difference was in her case that she was death penalty, whereas other people don't get sentenced to that. Was it
I
because
really
she's a
think it
woman?
was the No, I really think it was the confession tapes. Like the brutality of it and how callous, like when you listen to the
Yeah.
tapes, how callous they are. It was like they would be talking about it with, because you remember they're talking to Douglas, he's
Yeah.
wired. Um, and they'd be talking about it, and it's like they'd be talking about a moment that they were exhilarated about talking about, that's like a horrible
Yeah.
moment, and then it's like they all of a sudden Danny and her kind of realize, oh wait, yeah, we need to be remorseful, like, we feel really bad
Mm-hmm.
about it, and like they would sprinkle that in every once in a
Okay.
while when talking to Douglas, but otherwise when they were talking, it was always talking of like this exhilarating thing that happened, and then it was like, oops, wait, you know what, we should make sure that he knows, like, oh, we kind of feel bad
Right.
about it.
I don't know.
But they were
I think of like Chris Watts, who confessed,
okay. Okay.
and he's life in prison, and he killed 4 people because one was a
Well,
baby.
this is
It
Texas.
is Texas, yeah. And she killed 2 and gets death penalty, and he didn't get death penalty for killing his own family.
Yeah, I mean, I think he should be to have the death
Yeah.
penalty, but every state's
Right.
different as far as like
Mm-hmm.
laws and stuff. So I guess like Texas is obviously one that is a big supporter of the
Yeah.
death penalty. Um,
Because Watts, he was from
so I
Colorado.
think, and I don't know their
Yeah, I'm not sure
stance.
either.
I really don't know. So I think that has a lot to do with it too, as far as like the as we're recording this, I don't know if you saw, Kirsten, that the South Carolina man who just got
Oh, by the
executed
firing
by
squad.
firing
Yeah.
squad. Yeah. Every state is
Hmm.
different. That had to be approved by our state for him to be able to
Okay.
do that. It's legal. It's an
Hmm.
option. Just most people don't pick that
Right. Yeah.
option. So every state's different. So, but do you think then, so there's nothing we could do about it.
Hmm.
She was sentenced to the death penalty after what you hear from her story. And a lot of people questioned whether they thought her conversion to Christianity was real or not, or faked.
Right.
But I really don't think it was any kind of faked, because for one, it happened very quickly, and also like she had to have held up that charade until 1998, when she was in prison in 1983,
Hmm. Yeah.
because that was her whole thing through her whole rest of her life. She
Right.
was very committed to God and Christianity. So with learning all that information, does your opinion change that you think that it should have been reduced then, after the sentencing, to life in prison?
I'm not sure because she did still murder two people, regardless if she was on drugs or not.
Mm-hmm.
You're still a murderer.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. I mean, it's good to see that she did start to get some reforming. I just think that if we're gonna give the death penalty to people who murder, it needs to be more uniform and do it for everybody. Why are some people getting the
Yeah.
death penalty and some people are just getting life without parole?
And that's, I really think, where we come back to in every
Mm-hmm.
episode, that our justice system
It's
just
not just.
sucks. No, yeah, it's just not doing what
No,
it's supposed to be doing.
it's very like
So,
not uniform.
so would you, like, if you in the 1990s would have been sitting at home watching TV and saw this, would you have been like, you know what, that girl should be life in prison? Let that
Mm-hmm.
girl live. You
I
can't
don't
say whether you
know.
would.
I think
You
it
don't
does
know.
vary slightly case to case. It depends. Maybe if you're showing like true progression and reform, then maybe it should be changed to life without parole. But someone that's showing,
And
yeah,
she was
yeah,
showing complete, like, she married, um, a
hmm
reverend, and she completely changed her life around in
and
prison.
like someone that has no remorse or empathy and they still won't admit to what they did, someone like that does deserve the death penalty, I think.
Yeah. No, she completely uh confessed to
Yeah,
what she did, talked about it, because and I already know how her perspective probably came, was like she was getting right with
right.
Jesus. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? And when her death penalty was coming, like, she meets her own
right.
maker afterwards, and that's her
Hmm.
belief. And so I already know she would have been, not like, not okay with it,
Right, but like
obviously, like, she was
accepting of
fighting
her
for her
fate,
life.
kind of, because since she became
Yeah, because
religious,
of her
she's
faith.
comfortable knowing she'll see
Yes.
Jesus.
Yes. And like that's kind of how, and like she really did reform
Hmm.
herself, but also, and like you also have to, like, this is kind of a unique circumstance where we sometimes are always talking about murderers where um we want to blame their childhood and how they were brought up,
Right.
right? And we can blame that in this. It's like her childhood was terrible and things
Hmm.
like that. But like, then she became sober. She got to live a
Hmm.
life that she was unfamiliar with. and that's what made her change. So if she would have been grown up in a household or given an opportunity even at 16 when she, married Stephen or
Hmm.
whatever, if she would have gotten the opportunity to change herself from being in a drug house or anything like that, maybe she wouldn't have gone down the path that she did. Maybe she would have become somebody who maybe not necessarily picked up the Bible,
Hmm.
but maybe she I don't think she would have became a murderer. She wasn't a cold-blooded
Yeah,
killer.
but at the same time, it's
I don't
also
think.
like you can't use a bad childhood as an excuse, just like you can't use drugs as an excuse for your behavior.
Excuse.
At the
Yeah,
end of the day, you still chose to do it.
you did it. Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, she did
Hmm.
it. So, to be honest, for me and my opinion of this case is, and I think even, I don't know what, I can't sit here and say like back in the 90s because who knows what kind of
Right?
person I'd
Yeah.
be back in the 90s. I'm pretty cool, but I think currently with my opinion now, I would say that I think Carla's sentencing for the death penalty was just at the time of her
Hmm.
sentencing because they sentenced her for the crimes that she committed at the
Yeah.
time. The person that you become after those crimes doesn't wipe away
Right.
the crime that you
Yeah.
committed. I of course the whole point of going to prison is like hopefully you can
Hmm.
reform yourself, but switching her sentencing to life in prison would just be more money into the prison system to
Would be.
keep her alive, for a very long time.
Yeah.
She was
Oh
24
wow.
when she was 24
You
when
ruined
she
her
was
life.
arrested. Yeah. Yep. And she was, if I can do math really quick, 30. Well, she was born in 59 and she 98. Why can't I ever math?
39.
39. Yeah. She was 39 when she was
Wow.
executed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's young. Yeah, it's hard to say. I feel
It
like if
is.
someone shows like true, definite, obvious reform, then maybe they should have the ability to appeal to life without parole, but nothing less than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you
I
don't,
agree to that. Like if we are going to go from death penalty to something
hmm,
lesser, I there should be parole as an
no,
option. It should be life in
yeah,
prison
yeah,
without the possibility. Yeah. But like what she said about like swinging the axe and stuff, like that's a real psychopath's
it
brain.
is,
I know
yeah,
she was on drugs at that time, but like that, and I really feel like that doomed her as well in her trial
hmm,
because like who the hell says that kind of
right,
thing?
yeah, that's a little messed up,
A psychopath.
hmm, because it makes you
She's
wonder
talking about getting,
if she had
she was getting
gotten,
sexual
yeah,
gratification out of murdering
right,
somebody.
that's what she made it sound like,
So, yeah, and if like she was telling the truth, and I don't know why you would lie about something like
hmm,
that, like why that lie would fall out of your mouth.
right,
you know, like if she's telling the truth, that's a psychopath right
yeah,
there. You know,
hmm. And it makes you wonder if she
and
had gotten
also,
sober on her own prior to the crime, we still don't know what kind of person she would have been. She still could have been a terrible person.
no, and also, a pickaxe, right,
Hmm.
is not a one little pound hammer.
No.
Okay, she had to pick up that pickaxe and swing it 35
Yeah.
times. 35 times.
Because a
And
pickaxe,
when
it's going to be
she,
damaged, but it's like long and thin.
yeah, like it's got a
Yeah.
handle on it, yeah. And it's got, we'll post a picture of a
Yeah.
pickaxe so that everybody is aware of what it is. But it's got
Because that's like
the
what you
pick
use
on
on
one
ice,
end.
right? A pickaxe?
It's got two ends on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one's like a thinner
Mm-hmm.
broadhead, and the other one's a more
Yeah,
pointy end. Yeah. And she had to swing that 35 times.
Yeah, she didn't have to do it that many times. That's overkill.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's
Mhm.
overkill. So that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, there's something wasn't right with her to begin with, I think.
yeah.
And then the drugs just multiplied that and brought it out of her.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, there was somebody there who did that
Mhm.
crime. Karla, like, she did that. And I think the sentencing was appropriate to the Karla that did that crime at
Right.
that time.
And especially because I feel like the murder was also unprovoked. Like, she wasn't with him. He was at a
Yeah.
party with some other woman. Why are you showing up at his house to kill him? You weren't even in contact with him.
Literally wasn't even in contact with
Yeah.
him. Like, just was hanging on to this stupid grudge for whatever
Yeah.
reason. That's
Yeah.
it. Like,
So it
he
was like
didn't even
completely
provoke her. They weren't
unprovoked.
even in contact. Yeah. That's it.
So when you add all that
So it's
in, then
just,
maybe she did deserve the death penalty.
as I say, I mean, of course, we're all a different person than who we were when we were between the ages of 21 and 24.
Right.
Like, obviously, we weren't killing people, but I'm just saying that we're obviously
Yes,
different
very different.
people. So just because she went to jail and became a different person, to me, doesn't mean that her sentence should be reduced, is what I'm saying. I'm just glad she picked to become the different person she became was a good person.
Yeah.
I'm glad for that. But I don't feel like I feel like there was justice in her execution on February 3rd.
I can agree with that.
All right, so leave us our comments. Tell me what you think. I'm just curious.
What's your opinion of the death penalty?
And no judgment.
Yeah.
I don't want any judgment from other people. Everybody, I just want your opinions. That's it. Just yes, no, maybe so. Depends.
Because even myself, I go back and forth with it sometimes.
Yeah, and I was just specifically more talking about this case, like your opinion on this case of what we could evaluate from this case. Yes, I feel like every case is different, but that's my opinion on this case. So make like a shadow and follow us on Facebook
at Lurking in the Shadows Podcast.
Follow us on Instagram
at Lurking in the Shadows Podcast.
Check us out on TikTok
at Lurking in the Shadows Pod.
And send us a Gmail
at Lurking in the Shadows Podcast at gmail.com. And send us any case suggestions you might have. If there's anything you want us to cover, you can feel free to message us on Facebook or Instagram or send us an email. And keep lurking around for our next episode. Bye.
Bye.